Good morning, everyone. My name is Charlie, and I've traveled here from a very faraway land called Sarasota, Florida, to tell you about the most important invention of the last 3,000 years, hell, even 5,000 years. This invention is not the telephone. This invention is not the internet. This invention is not even the wheel. This is the printing press. Now you're all saying to yourself, what? Let me explain to you guys something. Before the printing press was invented, people never needed to learn to read and write. No one read and write. The literacy rate was only 2 in 10 people actually knew how to read and write. And I doubt even if it was that many. It was the elite. It was the church. It was the kings and queens and the bourgeois and all of the people on the top. There was no equality. There was no information. There was no University of Tampa. There was no TED Talks. It was impossible because all information came from the church and from the king. And the church and the king would take information and they wouldn't even let you own your own Bible. If you had your own Bible in your house, you can be burned at the stake for being a heretic. People never needed to learn to read and write because all information came from a very select few people. And these people basically told you something and you believed it. Information. Information is power. And then one day, well, not one day, but over the course of a few months and a few years, the printing press was invented. And all of a sudden, one person who knew how to read and write can take information, write it down, and instead of having the church have scribes painstakingly copy it over, you can have thousands of copies printed overnight. And you could disseminate, you can pass this information to people over and over. And if you said this, I said that, information almost overnight went from centralized to decentralized. And this is a big buzzword you guys have been hearing about in the last few months, if not few years on the news. Bitcoin, blockchain, decentralized money. But what the hell is decentralized money? What does that even mean? Take it in the context of information. Information before the printing press was centralized. There was no people, me saying this, you saying that. There was no reason to even have a debate because we all agreed on the same thing. We all got our information from one place, and we couldn't even read a Bible to tell us that that information was wrong. Now we have a different situation where you have multiple people telling us multiple things. And all of a sudden, people started asking questions. We talked earlier about the ages, the who, what, where, why, and when. They never even asked those questions before. Now, all of a sudden, a few thousand years ago, people were asking information. They were asking questions and getting information. And then we had multiple different religions. We had different churches. We had the founding of this country because the Protestants in Europe couldn't even own their own Bibles, and they couldn't preach their own version of what they saw religion was. They couldn't be their own spiritual people. They couldn't have any self-development. For lack of a better term, us human beings, we were sheep. We would get information and we wouldn't question it. And then we started getting information and passing information, and we would print information, and people were still burned at the stake for the printing press. And the Netherlands, which was the only country at the time that even allowed people to print their own information, allow printing presses, was in a civil war against Spain, and people would flock to the Netherlands and Belgium, and those countries were known as where you can be free. And then people came to this country to start to be free and to have their own religions. And then we had books, and the literacy rate today is, you flip that, maybe 2 in 10 people don't know how to read and write, and that's rapidly changing. With the advent of things like the internet and the telephone and the telegraph and pigeon carriers and the ability to send information from one person to another. But we talked earlier about fake news. Who controls that? When I read information on the internet, how do I know it's real? It comes from one central person, Facebook. It's centralized. Information has went from decentralized to a lot more centralized. We believe what we read on the internet. We believe all these things. We believe it. Furthermore, if you're in a war-torn country like Syria, or if you're in somewhere in southern Africa, You can't even get information out because the first thing when a revolution comes, they do is they turn off the main media. And in most of these countries, all the media is owned by the government. So people don't even know. They don't even have information, like North Korea and Cuba. Sometime in 2010, 2011, I don't remember, I was really young, living in my parents' basement. I was in an internet chat room, like most healthy young social people, hanging out. And I was a very non-social person, and someone just popped up on this chat room, now known as Satoshi. And Satoshi started saying, and his little disciples, the 4 or 5 people that knew what cryptocurrency was, said, hey, check this thing out. Download this software. So I download it. And then he says, and the other people say, let me send you 10,000 Bitcoin just for fun. So all of a sudden, some Bitcoin shows up on my computer, my software. And I says, okay, what's the big deal? It's just another version of PayPal that I could download. It doesn't really, what's so good about this? And everyone who were defensive about this brand new technology back then explained to me that unlike PayPal that maintains this centralized ledger and database. So when you send me money, or in the context of the printing press, you send me information, all of a sudden, instead of that ledger being maintained by one company or one centralized party, this ledger is now being maintained across everyone's computers that are using the software in real time. So if you send me money, or if you send me information, you can't take it back. You can't reverse it. You can't freeze it. You can't alter it. You can't counterfeit it. You can't change the information, change the time and the date stamp of when that information was sent or that money was sent. All of a sudden, we had decentralized money. Because the only way that I can go and reverse that ledger is if a majority, over 51% of all the people using the system decide to, hey, we're going to change something. And if they were to actually do that, the integrity of the system would collapse as a whole. So imagine if all of us in this room took our laptops and traveled we were spread all over the world. We were just thrown into all these different directions. And we were only connected through the internet. And the traffic going between our computers was indecipherable from any other traffic, from Facebook, Twitter, or whatever. It was traffic going from our computers, my computer, to your computer. And we decided to take Wikipedia or the encyclopedia and put it on our local hard drives on our computers. And imagine if one of us said, hey, I want to make an update. I want to add something to that. In real time, instead of that updating on my computer, it's now updating on all your computers in real time. Impossible for me to go back and change that now. So I can be sitting in my house in Syria where the government is not allowing me to post information or videos or data about what's going on in my hometown because they control all the information. And as soon as they get it up on a server, they shut it down. They take the information, they put it down. Countries are doing this around the world. When you control the information, when you control money, when you control finance, you control us. So if you take all that information, and that information was in real time spread to millions of computers around the world, and anyone could read or see a video of what's happening in your war-torn country, no one could shut it down. And that's freedom. That is taking the power of information and the power of money back out of the hands of the few, the governments and the corporation, and back in our hands. Blockchain technology, Bitcoin, Ethereum, all these other projects that are in the blockchain technology space today are doing to information, finance, medical, supply chain management, all these different industries, voting. It's doing to that what the printing press did for information. Imagine a world where you don't wake up in the morning and read about this country trying to do their democratic elections. And of course, the elections are mired in conflict, and they have voter recounts, and this guy's contesting this guy, and this guy claims he won, and then there's a war, and millions of people die. We're all not even reacting right now. Why? because it happens every week. We hear about it all the time. We're desensitized to it. It doesn't matter to us anymore. Or if it does, we're just so used to hearing about it. And imagine a world where that didn't happen anymore. With blockchain technology, you take the corruption and you take the inability for anyone to claim superiority over another person away. That goes away. It's impossible. Because in order for someone to actually do that, they'd have to collapse the whole system. And if they collapse the whole system, then no one would use it or trust it anymore. Let's talk about the financial systems in North Korea or in Cuba. There are thriving black markets. These black markets are actually super deregulated because no one can control them. The reason the black markets exist is because people said, to hell with the laws and to hell with our crazy governments, we're going to have our own economy. 2014, I served a year and a half in federal prison. In federal prison, the administration runs the whole economy. They tell you that your family and friends can send you money. They're only have to send you up to a certain amount of money. And you can only spend up to $360 a month in our commissary. This is the list of things you can buy. This is the prices that you're going to pay. This is how many you can buy. You can't buy more than 10 packs of tuna fish, because God help me, 10 more tuna fish is bad. And they tell you, you know what, we don't like you today. You can't go to commissary today. We're going to close commissary. I was sleeping one day, and as a person who studied economics in college, I looked at this and I said, you know, this is a perfect example of a black market economy. Here we have a group of people that are all pretty much the same in a place that they can't leave, that need a marketplace, need the ability to exchange value between each other. Now, if we take the administration like the government controls our bank accounts. By the way, when you guys put money in your bank, you don't actually own that money anymore. You're lending that money to the bank at an extremely low interest rate. But don't make a run on the banks, because that's not good for anyone. But my point is that everything is controlled. They can wake up and print as much money as they want, whenever they want. The money sitting in our pockets, in our bank account, if they print more money, that makes the value of our money much less. So when the various governments and corporations decide to be irresponsible, we're the ones paying for it. That's not fair. That's not equal. If we had a better financial system, like Bitcoin gives us, or some derivative of that down the road, where it's decentralized and not one corporation or not one government can control it, we'll have a lot freer money. So anyways, I'm sitting in prison, just reading a book, and I notice that I'd like a cold soda, but it's not my commissary day. So I know that there's a guy, of course, like any system, there's a gentleman who has his own little store. And this is all for educational purposes. I go to him and I say, hey man, can I get a cold soda from you? So you're thinking to yourself, well, how are you going to pay this guy? Well, what had happened was, over time, the economy inside of prison decided to, by themselves, no one person, no figurehead, no one said this, but the market itself, we trust the market itself said that we all want to use the packs of mackerel fish as currency. Now you say to yourself, packs of mackerel fish as currency? Well, you ever go to the supermarket and they sell tuna fish in those single packets you could buy for like $1.50. That tuna fish, we had mackerel. We had tuna as well, but tuna fish, personally, it doesn't have any texture. Mackerel, it's like it tastes like steak. It doesn't taste like steak, but it has like a texture of something not tuna fish. So the marketplace decided we're going to use mackerel fillets in pouches as currency. The price is stable, doesn't change. It's scarce. There's only a finite supply. The inflation rate of mackerel is 500 inmates multiplied by 52 weeks per year. Every inmate can only go to the commissary once a week, and they can only buy 14 mackerels per week. So you had 500 times 14 times 52. the inflation rate of mackerel. It's stable. The printing press is on autopilot and can never be changed. It's scarce. Utility. You can eat mackerel. Mackerel was the highest source of protein in the prison system. If you went to work out, if you wanted to eat some food, if you can make anything with mackerel. You can make soup, you can make mackerel and cheese. It tastes terrible. You can do all these different things with mackerel. So mackerel became the currency of choice. It became a transactional currency. No one told us this was what's going to happen. It just happened. The market made it happen. We trust markets. If we trust markets and they are efficient when we allow them to be. Free markets, free the world, free us. So anyways, I got my cold soda, and the gentleman said, you can give me either one eating mac or one money mac. And I said, wait, I have a mackerel. What's a money mac? And why is, sorry, it was one eating mac or 1.5 money macs or 2 money macs. And I said, what's a money mac and why does it cost more to buy a soda with 2 money macs? And he had no answer for me. He was like, listen, I just run the store. So I went back to my economic laboratory, basically in my little cubicle, and I sat and I thought, what the hell is a money mac? So I went to go ask my bunkie, and he said, Charlie, a money mac is essentially expired mackerel that was never eaten. Because basically what happened is, and this is something that I figured out over time, is that people are in prison for a long time. And that's another conversation, social justice, which I can talk about for hours. But people are unfairly in prison for a very long time. I had bunkies that were in there for 20, 30 years for selling a pound of marijuana. So these guys are now transacting with mackerel, but they need a savings account. They need a way to save their money. If a guy's giving haircuts and he's charging 2 max, how is he going to actually save that for when he wants to buy a new pair of headphones for 10 max in a month from now? What do you save? You save mackerels. You keep them in your locker. They stack nicely. It's perfect. What happens when you're in jail for 20 years? These mackerels don't have a shelf life of longer than about 2. So over time, the market created another currency called the money mac. The money mac had no utility. You couldn't eat it. The only reason this bag of oily mesh had value because the other 500 inmates in the prison system believed it had value. Isn't that why we all use the dollar today? Because we all believe it has value. There's nothing backing our dollar. We all believe fiat by federal decree. We are sheep. We all believe. So anyways, people have their life savings in these money macs. I'm telling you, I knew guys who had like hundreds of these things. And they were currency. You can give it to a guy, and he could potentially send it outside to your family for you. There was a whole like Western Union of prison going on. It was crazy stuff, hypothetically speaking. So of course, one day I wake up, and there's something's going on in the cafeteria. Everyone's going crazy. People are running around like Nutella is on sale in France. Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. They're ripping each other's heads off. And I run to the cafeteria, and what happened? We never knew what happened to the inmate. But there was an inmate who had hundreds of money macs. And the prison administration confiscated it from him. And instead of just getting rid of it, they decided, here, anyone can have it. Within seconds, they debased the currency. I saw people's life savings go away immediately. People who had hundreds of dollars lost their value overnight because now, if I go to the guy and say, I want to buy the soda, he says, I don't take money max anymore because I have too many. They're worthless now. This is what happens when we allow a few people to control our lives. So I got involved in Bitcoin and blockchain technology to potentially try to help and create a better financial system. And I'm not an anarchist. I'm not about end the Fed, or I'm pragmatic. I'm a realist. The financial system works somewhat because we have no better option. I have a bank account. I have credit cards. I take loans. I'm the same as everyone else in that respect. I use it full-fledgedly, use the financial system just like all of you guys. But it doesn't mean I have to like it. That doesn't mean in a collaborative age, I can collaborate with other people around the world, regardless of your gender, the color of your skin, your religion. Doesn't matter who you are. We can all work together to create a better global financial system. And so, instead of ending the Fed, let's transcend the Fed. Let's create a better system, a financial system, a better medical system, a better supply chain system, a better system of voting where there's no corruption. And instead of forcing people to use our system, because when you have these elections, all it is one traitor, not traitor, well, he's a traitor too, but one dictator going and replacing another one. Let's create a better system that's controlled by us, that prevents any one of us from having too much power. But unlike communism and all that other stuff that doesn't work, it incentivizes us, financially incentivizes us to work harder because we get paid more by the system. Proof of brain. Your brain is capital, guys. You're in college, you're in university, you're working. Your brain is your money. Use your brain to make the world better. You make more money. You'll enjoy your life. We live in a beautiful place. We have the beautiful weather. We are so fortunate. So let's all work together to build a better system and transcend the corruption and the greed. Thank you very much. I'm Charlie Shrem. Have a great day, guys.